The sun was merciless that afternoon, casting harsh shadows over the bustling streets of the city. Horns blared, pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks, and the sounds of life blended into a chaotic symphony. Through this whirlwind of urban activity, a sleek black motorcade weaved its way down the crowded avenues. At the head of the procession, Donald Trump's Cadillac One glided like a symbol of authority, the dark windows hiding the figure within. Inside the lead vehicle, Trump was engrossed in a report from one of his advisors. His sharp eyes scanned the documents, his expression impassive, until something outside the window caught his attention. It was small, a moment that might have been missed by most, but it was enough to make him lean forward, his focus shifting. On the sidewalk stood a frail girl, her thin frame barely noticeable amidst the sea of people rushing past her. She was no older than 10, her tangled hair peeking out from under a faded gray hoodie. In her small hands, she clutched a battered cardboard sign, its message hastily scrawled but heartbreakingly clear, "Please help. My family needs a miracle." Trump's brows furrowed slightly as he took in the scene. The girl's wide, blue eyes were fixed on the passing vehicles, searching for something, a sign, perhaps, that someone would care enough to stop. Her face, smudged with dirt, was a portrait of quiet desperation, and her thin shoulders slumped as if bearing the weight of the world. "Stop the car," Trump commanded abruptly, his voice cutting through the steady murmur of conversation inside the vehicle. The driver hesitated, his foot hovering over the brake pedal as he glanced toward the rearview mirror. The motorcade jolted to a halt, causing the trailing vehicles to swerve slightly in confusion. Advisors and security personnel exchanged puzzled looks, their unease evident. "Sir, this area isn't secure," one of the bodyguards said cautiously. "We should proceed with the route." Trump waved him off without a second thought, his gaze never leaving the small figure on the sidewalk. "I want to know that girl's story," he said firmly. The hesitation in the car dissolved into quiet compliance. No one dared to challenge his decision further. Trump opened the door and stepped out, his polished shoes landing on the gritty pavement. The sudden appearance of a figure so recognizable sent ripples of curiosity through the nearby crowd. A few bystanders raised their phones, their screens capturing the unexpected moment. The motorcade loomed behind him like a fortress, but Trump's focus was singular. He walked toward the girl with deliberate steps, the chatter around him fading into the background. When he reached her, he crouched slightly, his towering presence softening as he spoke. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his tone gentle yet carrying the unmistakable authority of a leader. The girl flinched slightly, her hands gripping the cardboard sign tighter. Her eyes darted to the security guard standing a few feet away before settling on Trump's face. "My name is Lily," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the city. "Lily," Trump repeated with a small nod. "Why are you standing here?" Lily bit her lip, her expression flickering with a mix of fear and determination. She hesitated before answering, her voice trembling. "I need help from my mom," she said. "She's really sick, and we don't have a home. My dad died in the war." Trump froze for a moment, her words cutting through the noise around him like a knife. He straightened slightly, his gaze steady and filled with thought. "Where did your dad serve?" he asked, his voice softer now. "In the Middle East," Lily replied, her words laced with a sorrow that no child should have to carry. "He was a soldier, a hero. But when he died, everything fell apart." The weight of her story hung in the air, silencing even the onlookers who had gathered nearby. Trump took a deep breath, his expression resolute as he turned to his entourage. "Get the car ready," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I want to see where Lily lives." The reaction was immediate. "Sir, this is extremely dangerous," a bodyguard interjected. "We can't guarantee your safety in that area." Trump's gaze snapped to him, cold and unyielding. "If a child can stand on a busy street to save her mother, then I can risk going to where they live. If you're afraid, feel free to leave," he said sharply. Trump placed a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder, his eyes meeting hers. "Lead the way, Lily. Let's go meet your mother," he said gently. The motorcade began to move again, but this time its pace was slower, the gleaming vehicles winding through narrowing streets. The scenery shifted dramatically as the luxury storefronts and towering skyscrapers gave way to crumbling buildings and dimly lit alleys. Trash littered the streets, and the air grew heavy with the smell of neglect. Inside the car, Lily sat nervously beside Trump, her small hands resting in her lap. Her eyes darted to the window, reflecting a mixture of hope and apprehension. "We're almost there, Mr. Trump," she said softly, pointing toward a makeshift home tucked into the shadows of the alley. Trump nodded, his brow furrowing as the car came to a stop. He stepped out, the stark contrast between his immaculate suit and the dilapidated surroundings more pronounced than ever. The house was barely standing, a fragile structure made of splintered wood and rusted tin sheets. Its makeshift door sagged on broken hinges, and the roof was riddled with gaping holes. A few children, their faces smudged with dirt, peered curiously at the luxurious motorcade from the shadows. Lily led Trump to the door, her small hand gripping his tightly. "My mom is inside," she whispered, her voice trembling. Trump followed her through the creaking doorway, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The room was sparsely furnished, the air heavy with the scent of damp wood and despair. In the corner, a frail woman lay on a small bed, her sunken cheeks and hollow eyes betraying the toll of illness. She struggled to sit up as strangers filled the tiny space. "Mom, this is Mr. Trump," Lily said, her voice soft but brimming with hope. "He's here to help us." The woman's lips parted, her eyes widening with a mix of surprise and apprehension. "Mr. Trump," she murmured, her voice weak and hesitant, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Trump knelt beside her, his expression steady and compassionate. "You don't need to say anything," he said gently. "Lily did something remarkable bringing me here. Now, I'd like to hear your story." The smell of damp wood and mildew hit Donald Trump as he stepped inside the small, crumbling house. His polished shoes tapped lightly against the uneven dirt floor, a stark contrast to the frailty of the home surrounding him. The dim light filtering through the patched-up walls revealed every detail of the poverty within: a rickety chair with a broken leg, a pile of worn-out blankets serving as storage, and in the corner, a frail woman lying on a makeshift bed. The woman struggled to sit up, her hollow eyes widening in disbelief at the sight of strangers, especially the one who now knelt beside her daughter, Lily. Her lips, cracked and dry, trembled as she tried to find words. Lily moved quickly to her side, clutching her mother's hand as though to reassure her. "Mom, this is Mr. Trump," Lily said, her voice small but steady, brimming with hope. "He's here to help us." Trump stepped closer, his sharp gaze scanning the room as he took in every detail. His expression, usually composed and authoritative, softened as he knelt beside the bed. "You don't need to say anything right now," he said gently, his voice unusually warm. "Lily told me about you and your family. I'm here to help." The woman's eyes filled with tears, her gaunt face contorting with emotion. "Mr. Trump. I don't know what to say," she murmured, her voice weak and raspy. "My husband, he gave his life for this country. And now, we're just forgotten." Trump's jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, the weight of her words seemed to settle on his shoulders. He nodded, his voice calm but resolute. "Not anymore," he said. "You've been through enough. Tell me everything. I want to hear your story." The woman's name was Maria, and as she spoke, her words painted a vivid picture of a life once filled with love and hope. Her husband, Daniel, had been a soldier, a man of honor and courage who had dedicated his life to serving his country. But when Daniel was killed in the Middle East, everything fell apart. Without his income, Maria struggled to make ends meet. She worked until her health failed, and they were evicted from their home. Now, this small shack was all they had left. "My husband was a hero," Maria said, her voice breaking. But heroes' families, we don't get treated like heroes. We're left to fend for ourselves. Lily's small voice interrupted, trembling with emotion. I don't want my mom to die, she whispered. I don't know what to do anymore. Her words struck Trump like a blow. He turned to Lily, placing a hand on her shoulder. You've done more than most people would, he said firmly. You fought for your mom when no one else would. Now, it's my turn to fight for you. Turning to his entourage, Trump's tone shifted from compassionate to commanding. I need a full report on this family's situation, healthcare, finances, everything, he ordered. And I want her medical condition evaluated tonight. Sir, this area is dangerous, one advisor interjected nervously. We shouldn't stay here too long. Let the local organizations handle this. Trump's steely gaze silenced the protest. She doesn't need promises, she needs action, he snapped. If we leave now, we send a message that their lives don't matter. I won't do that. His words left no room for argument. The advisors and security team exchanged wary glances but quickly moved to comply. Outside, the narrow alley was alive with whispers and cautious stares. More residents had gathered, their faces etched with curiosity and skepticism. Children peeked from behind their parents, their wide eyes fixed on the scene. The presence of the Cadillac One and Trump's imposing figure had turned the dilapidated neighborhood into an unexpected spectacle. Trump stepped out of the house, his eyes scanning the crowd. He saw the weariness in their faces, the quiet desperation that mirrored Maria's story. A middle-aged man stepped forward, his face weathered and lined with exhaustion. Mr. Trump, the man began, his voice hoarse but steady. I can't believe you're really here. But if you are, you need to know. We're not just poor. We've been forgotten. Most of us here, we're families of veterans. We've given everything, and now we have nothing. Trump listened intently, his expression unreadable but his gaze unwavering. The man continued, his voice rising with a mix of frustration and sorrow. My son had to drop out of school. We survive on scraps, and it's never enough. We're just waiting for someone to remember us. The silence that followed was deafening. Trump's eyes swept over the crowd, taking in every face, every child clutching a parent's hand. Finally, he turned to one of his advisors. I want a full report on every family here, their needs, their struggles, he said, his tone sharp as steel. And I want it on my desk by tomorrow morning. Sir, the advisor began cautiously, we could coordinate with local agencies too. They've waited long enough, Trump interrupted, his voice firm. If Lily can stand on a street corner asking for help, we have no excuse to delay. As the motorcade prepared to leave, Trump turned back to the crowd. He stepped onto the creaking wooden steps of Maria's home, his voice carrying through the stillness of the alley. No family, especially the family of someone who sacrificed everything for this country, should have to live like this, he declared. You've been forgotten, but that ends today. I promise you, I will not only help Lily and her mother, but every one of you. Together, we will change this. The crowd erupted into hesitant applause, the sound growing stronger as hope flickered to life in their tired eyes. Tears glistened on a few faces, and children clung tightly to their parents, watching the scene with newfound faith. Trump turned back to Lily, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. You've been brave, Lily, he said softly. You didn't just help your mom, you've helped this entire community. I promise you, I won't let you down. As the Cadillac One pulled away, the crowd watched in silence, their eyes following the man who had just made a promise that could change everything. Inside the car, Trump sat in thoughtful silence, his mind already racing with plans. This wasn't the end. For Donald Trump, this was just the beginning of a far greater mission. The atmosphere outside Lily's home had transformed. What was once a silent, skeptical gathering of weary faces was now an energized crowd filled with cautious hope. Children clung to their parents, neighbors exchanged hushed words, and everyone's eyes were fixed on Donald Trump as his motorcade slowly disappeared down the alley. For the first time in years, it felt like change was possible. The very next morning, the story of Lily and her family swept through news outlets and social media like wildfire. Videos of Trump stepping out of his Cadillac One and kneeling to speak with Lily had gone viral. The hashtag Hope for Heroes trended worldwide, and the image of Trump holding Lily's hand became an emblem of compassion and responsibility. But for Trump, this was no media stunt. This was a call to action. Back at his office, Trump wasted no time. He convened an emergency meeting with his top advisors, demanding swift and decisive action. Reports on Lily's community poured in, detailing the harrowing struggles of dozens of veteran families who had been forgotten by the system. Each story painted a grim picture of sacrifice met with neglect. "We don't just need a solution," Trump said firmly, his voice echoing through the conference room. "We need a movement. I want programs, funding, and partnerships in place immediately. No more delays, no more excuses." Within days, Trump launched the Hope for Heroes initiative, a nationwide campaign aimed at providing housing, healthcare, and education to the families of fallen and disabled veterans. Corporate giants, inspired by Trump's actions, pledged millions in support. Non-profit organizations partnered with the initiative to deliver resources directly to communities in need. The first site for the program? Lily's neighborhood. A week after Trump's visit, construction crews arrived at the narrow alleys where Lily lived. The community watched in awe as crumbling homes were repaired, streets were cleaned, and a community center was built to provide education and healthcare services. Maria, Lily's mother, received immediate medical attention, and for the first time in years, she began to regain her strength. Lily, too, became a beacon of hope. Her courage inspired others in her community to come forward, share their stories, and advocate for change. One evening, standing outside her now-repaired home, Lily held a small microphone in her hands. Cameras and reporters surrounded her, but her voice was steady as she spoke. "I never thought holding a cardboard sign would change anything," she said, her eyes glistening with emotion. "But Mr. Trump showed me that even the smallest voices can make a big difference. Thank you for listening, not just to me, but to everyone here." The ripple effect of Lily's story and the Hope for Heroes initiative was felt across the nation. Stories of transformation poured in from communities everywhere. A veteran's widow in Texas received funding to open a small bakery, providing jobs to other struggling families. In Ohio, a group of volunteers repaired homes for veterans who had been living in unsafe conditions. High school students in California launched a campaign to collect school supplies for children in veteran families, inspired by Lily's resilience. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, became a part of something bigger, a movement that reminded the nation of its responsibility to those who had sacrificed the most. Months later, on a bright spring morning, the culmination of the Hope for Heroes initiative was unveiled, a national memorial in Washington, D.C., dedicated to fallen veterans and their families. The memorial featured a bronze statue of a soldier kneeling beside his young daughter, holding her hand as if to pass on his strength. Lily and her mother were invited to stand beside Trump as the statue was revealed. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing across the National Mall. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she clutched Lily's hand, their journey from despair to hope finally complete. Trump stepped forward to address the crowd. His voice, steady and filled with conviction, carried across the sea of faces. "This monument is more than a tribute," he began. "It's a promise that no family who has sacrificed for this country will ever be forgotten again." Lily's courage reminded us that even in the darkest moments, hope can shine through. And it's our duty to keep that hope alive. As the applause subsided, Trump turned to Lily and gestured for her to step forward. Clutching the microphone tightly, she took a deep breath. "I'm just a little girl," she began, her voice small but unwavering. "I thought no one would hear me when I stood on that sidewalk. But Mr. Trump showed me that people do care. And now, because of all of you, my mom and I have a home again. Thank you for not just helping us, but helping so many other families like ours." The crowd rose to their feet, their applause thunderous. Lily's words had touched something deep in their hearts, a reminder of the power of unity and compassion. The Hope for Heroes initiative didn't stop with Lily's neighborhood. It continued to grow, reaching families across the country who had long been overlooked. Trump remained personally involved, visiting communities, rallying support, and ensuring that promises were kept. As months turned into years, the movement became a symbol of what could be achieved when compassion met action. And through it all, the story of Lily and her cardboard sign served as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the smallest voices could inspire monumental change.